Hey, Joe here from Home Studio Corner. This is the fourth video in a 5-part series on mixing. So far we've talked about the beginning of the mix. Now we're going to talk about the part in the middle that takes the most time. That's when you start adding plugins, doing EQ, compression, all that stuff. But I'm not going to talk about that exactly. I want to talk about how to approach it, how to think about it in a way that keeps you from overmixing. Overmixing is a big thing, especially when you're starting out. It's where you just keep doing stuff to the mix because you just don't know where to stop. And there's an element of that everybody has to go through that at some point. But I want to hopefully help you get through that quickly, or maybe avoid that altogether, so you can do what needs to be done without doing too much. And that's kind of the focus of this video. So there's a very simple approach that I take to mixing. It's not easy, but it's simple. Once we've imported our tracks, we've checked the phase, and we've done our balance, our static mix, at that point it's time to start doing the real work of mixing. Don't skip the other steps, especially that last one. Getting those balances right is the key to everything. But once we do that, there are going to be things that we don't like, things that need to be addressed. So the way I like to think about it is kind of a threefold process that you repeat over and over. The first is to listen. That may seem like a big, obvious statement, but you'd be surprised how little you tend to listen when you're mixing. Yes, of course, you're hearing what's happening, but a lot of times you're listening for something. You're listening, maybe you get everything set up and then you go to the kick drum and you work on the kick and then the snare and then and you just kind of go down the line working on every track by track, and you're improving it maybe, but you're not really listening to how it's working in the context of the mix. What matters is how the mix sounds. It doesn't matter how the kick drum sounds by itself, because guess what? No one's going to hear the kick drum by itself. They're going to hear that in the context of the overall mix. So my approach is really simple. Step 1, listen for problems. Step 2, fix the problems. Step 3, repeat. It's super simple. Listen, fix, repeat. Now, let me flesh that out just a little bit. Listen is super simple. You listen for a problem. You're listening for what isn't working in the mix. You've got an idea in your mind of what the finished mix will sound like. What do you hear that is the most problematic right now? You're listening for the most problematic part of the song, and then you fix that, and then you do it all over again. So for the mix we've been working on, the raw tracks for Fighter, a couple of the initial things that I know is the lead vocal needs work. It's too boomy and it's inconsistent volume-wise. That's one of the very first things I would look at. The drums, there's a lot of things about the drums. They're not as punchy and tight as I want. The bass comes in and out. I want to control that dynamic. One of the electric guitars is too boomy. The acoustic guitar is too boomy. So these are all huge list of problems that we need to fix. And the temptation is to just go in and start fixing, just jump from one to the next with no real rhyme or reason. What I'd like to encourage you to do is to slow down and listen for the biggest problem and solve that first. And once you've solved that, listen for the next biggest problem and then solve that. And repeat that over and over. It gives you a direction and it gives you a focus, and it keeps you from spending 3 hours just jumping all over the place and then realizing, man, this mix still sounds awful. This way you're only dealing with what's broken, you're fixing what's broken, and then you're listening for the next broken thing. Okay? So, does this take place using the solo button? No, not at all. This takes place listening to everything. Maybe you go to that big part of the song where everybody's playing at once and you just listen through over and over and you keep fixing problems in that section. Then you expand out to the intro, verse, chorus, all the rest of the song. Okay? Now, the big problem here, or the big hurdle that a lot of people will face, is you may not know what the problem is, right? You listen and a part of you says, okay, it's not done, it's not mixed, but I don't know what I'm listening for. Let me tell you a quick story. I don't know how true this is, but I heard it once, so I'm going to share it with you. The story goes that people who... Have you seen the latest $100 bill if you're in the US? They look crazy. There's like purple and yellow, and there's a big strip down the middle, and the number looks completely fake. I was paying for groceries the other day, and I said, well, here's one of those fake 100s. It doesn't look like it should be real, but it is. Why do they keep changing them? Why do they keep making them more crazy and complicated? I imagine a part of that is to prevent counterfeit, right? It's harder to reproduce that crazy bill than apparently it was the good old-fashioned $100 bill. So why do they do it? Well, so if you are a person who is an expert in spotting counterfeit bills, what do you think you spend all your time looking at? Do you spend all your time studying all the counterfeits over the years? Or do you spend all your time studying the real thing? The answer is you study the real thing. So the people who are good at spotting counterfeit bills are the ones who know the real thing intimately well. They know every square centimeter of that tiny little dollar bill, so that when they see something that's trying to imitate that but has a flaw somewhere, their eye is instantly drawn to the flaw. They instantly see what's wrong with it, and they're able to say, yeah, this is a counterfeit. Now, are there people who have that job? I don't know, but the concept holds up. If you want to get good at sitting and listening to a full mix and being able to say, that's the problem, and then go in and fix that, you have to become familiar with what good music and good mixes sound like. How do you do that? It takes a lot of time and effort. But it's simple and anyone can do it. You go sit in front of your speakers, the place where you're going to be mixing your music, whether it's in front of speakers or on headphones, and you listen. And you make this a part of your regular routine where you sit and listen to a great album. And not just listen while you're like doing email and vacuuming the room. You're actually listening with the same sort of mindset you would have if you were mixing, and you really listen. What is the balance of everything? Volume-wise? Where is everything pan-wise? What's panned over here? What's over here? How much of it is out to the sides? How much of it is up the middle? What's the low end like? How does the bass sound in relation to everything else? How much overall low frequencies are there in this mix versus the highs and the mids? And you just keep listening and you keep immersing yourself in good music. Then when you switch over to your music and you listen to your mix after spending time listening to good mixes in your studio, you instantly hear, oh, my mix has way too much mid-range, or my mix has way too much bass, or my vocal is super muddy compared to everything else I listen to. And those problems begin to just raise their hand and say, hi, come deal with me. The only way you get there is by familiarizing yourself with good mixes, becoming so familiar with them that when you hear one of yours and it's not there, you can instantly pick out, okay, this doesn't sound like a professional mix, let me fix that. And then you go through this process as I've described, where you listen, you fix the problem, then you listen again, and then you fix the next problem, and you just keep going through that cycle until your mix is finished. Now in the next video, I'm going to talk about how to do that final step, how to actually know when the mix is finished. But this is a phase that may take you a few hours, it may take you a few days. It doesn't matter as long as you're continually moving forward and making progress on your mix. Are all your mixes going to be home runs? No, of course not, especially if you're starting out. But this is the process. It's going to be frustrating at first, but as you develop your ears, as you get better at critically listening, you're going to be able to more quickly identify the problems, and you're going to be able to more quickly solve them. So mixing becomes fun. You're like, oh, problem, solved. Oh, problem, solved. And you just do that for a couple hours, and you got yourself a great sounding mix. Okay. If you're into mixing, and I'm sure you are, you wouldn't be this far in the video, you need to check out Dueling Mixes. It's a place where you get fresh multi-tracks every month, a backlog of 60 plus multi-tracks of songs to be able to mix yourself, videos from both me and Graham Cochran showing you how we mix the song, a community of people who are just like you who love to mix and like to nerd out over mixing stuff, which is awesome, and a monthly coaching call where you can jump on live and ask me and Graham your questions, or send us questions beforehand and we'll answer them. It's super great, and you can get a free trial over at duelingmixes.com. That's it from me. Happy mixing.